Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Live Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele VanDusen and June Colson, a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, it's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Live Support, with Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball, with June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Live Support, with Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Live Support.
The Live Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause. Woo! That was magic. Welcome to the award-winning Live Support Podcast. And we are so excited to be doing part 2 of our comedy panel with Andrea Caspari and Brian Kohatsu. So last week, friends, we left you as we finished up a conversation about finding your, what, Michele?
Voice.
Finding your voice. She's still looking for hers. Finding your voice. And this week, friends, this is part 2 of the comedy panel. Yes, and we are going to talk today about handling a heckler. Michele, are you excited about part 2? Are we ready to go?
Are you a good host? I don't know if you're a good host. Can you be hosting? You didn't tell me a joke yet. Hey, I was trying to do a heckle for you. It's not working, is it? You know what? We should probably just tune in and listen and find out how to do it right.
Our second topic that we're going to dive into here real quick is hecklers. Being heckled. So I said, I just did a specific event that definitely I got really fortunate and I made it out of there alive and nobody tried to murder me because they didn't like me. But what you said, Brian, about your voice being likable, I think that's what saved me in this particular room. The people who brought me in knew who I was, how I do comedy, that I'm a clean comedian, you know, those type of things. I kind of trusted that they knew who and what they were hiring.
Yeah.
And then that they were professional, and it was not a situation that was professional, and it was not a room that I was supposed to be in, but I didn't get murdered because I was at least likable on stage. And I did acknowledge that, like, you know, hey, we're doing this and I'm still happy to be here, and let's keep rolling. But one of my biggest fears, just being completely vulnerable, is the heckler, right? I've been fortunate to be in situations and places where I really haven't had to deal with that. And going into it knowing I was about to be just literally thrown to the wolves, I wasn't really sure how to handle a heckler. So Brian, you spend so much time at the clubs. Andrea, I know you've had a long history of doing comedy clubs. But Brian, your perspective, definitely we'll dive in there starting out. What is a heckler? Okay. When do they become a heckler and not just someone who's just overzealous and enjoying the show and thinking they want to talk? And then we'll talk about what do we do about it. So let's start with what is a heckler? When did they become a heckler?
I think there's a lot of definitions for heckler, and sometimes it's not exactly true. I think on average, the average person who's not a comedian believes a heckler is going to be somebody who's going to be just go after you, mean, rude, and just for whatever reason, trying to get the best of you, which I've never really got. I mean, I've seen maybe that once or twice, but most hecklers are just trying to, quote, hecklers are trying to help you. And then the overzealous person you're talking about who just wants to be part of the show, or they're having a good time. And it's a question of just like, can we get them under control? So seeing what I get to see at the club all the time, you get that person one time, it's like, okay, maybe that's it. Next time they do something, then it's a question where if staff needs to come over and say, hey, I know you guys are having a good time. You just need to keep it down and don't talk to the comedians. Okay. Oh, okay. Sometimes it's squashed, you're done. Sometimes it's like, what, I can't have a good time? Well, I mean, if they talk to you, that's one thing, but don't outwardly talk to them. Sometimes they get that, they understand. So it is I've seen a heckler in terms of a person who was overly happy, laughing so hard and repeating punchlines to everyone around them that it became annoying. That person we actually ended up having to kick out.
Yeah.
And I was on stage.
Oh no.
I was killing it. No.
Uh,
But she was drunk, and she was just, she's repeating it to everybody, and she was getting complaints by everybody around her. So she had to be taken out of the room. And then her husband was like, I always find it funny when somebody gets kicked out and the spouse decides to stay. Well, I paid for the show. I want to see it. So he stayed through the rest of my set, and then he left when she left. But so it's just they want to be a part of the show or whatever it is. So in terms of how you view the type of heckle depends on how you have to handle the heckler. And us as comedians, if you don't have a good staff who's going to go talk to them, that is a problem, because now it's all on you. So you have to handle it either. I always say, don't get aggressive with them. If I hear something going on, I just play up to your personality and who you are. I'm like, you guys are having fun, right? You having a good time? You're having a good time because you're talking a lot. But I mean, I like you. I love you. I think everybody in the room loves you. And I think they would love if you would just keep it down just a little bit more. Am I right? Yeah. And everyone's like, yeah. And I'm like, see, we like you. We just want you to stay, but just be less, Is that cool? We good? Okay.
Yeah.
Then play it off as like, okay, that was weird. Okay, where was I? Anyway. And then you go, but play with it, figure out how you have to do it. If you have to call out to staff saying, hey, this has become kind of an issue. And I always try to if it's a large enough audience, the audience will back you. If it's like a smaller audience, it's very difficult to say, is this annoying? Because now it's like one-on-one. It feels like,
yeah,
I need you to take this person out for me. No, but however you need to handle it with your comfort level is the best. And remember, the one thing is you have a microphone amplified. You can always talk louder than them. So if need be, you have to do it just to kind of win that war for a second. Then they'll get squashed. But I have a million heckler stories in terms of what we've seen at the club. And it's the range.
Yes.
So.
Okay. We're going to bounce back to a heckler story, but we're going to bounce over to Andrea and your experiences. Okay. So you've been in the clubs.
Yeah.
And but a heckler can happen anywhere. My first experience with a heckler was actually at a theater show with Jeff Allen, and this is like that is not at all where you would expect. Both of us were like, what is happening? And it was somebody up in the balcony, and I couldn't see them. I couldn't hardly tell what they were saying. It was very I couldn't defend myself because I didn't even know, where is this voice coming from? What is happening? So I think sometimes we think about just a comedy club, but you've worked so many different venues and things like that. What is your experience with hecklers? How do you define it? And have you experienced it in a theater show versus a club?
Okay, so everything Brian has said is 100%. On top of that, I agree so much. If you can get the audience on your side, you're good. If they can see it, or you can kind of call attention to that. I really don't have a lot of heckler stories outside of the classroom.
Oh, well,
so here's the thing. Let me tell you what. I don't know if I've ever been heckled in a club, because I don't know if they, here's the thing. I'm a teacher. You can't scare me. Okay. There's nothing that I can't incorporate. So if you say, have you ever been heckled? Maybe every single time, maybe never, because I will kind of do a call and response and kind of ask people, like, have you ever done internet dating? Oh my gosh, that's, and then someone will say me, and I'm like, oh, are you on an internet date right now, or internet date right now? And, oh yeah, I was on farmersonly.com, but the goat didn't call me back, just everything is all about how you want to interpret it. The problem, I think that the line of heckling is when they're belligerent and they won't stop, and it's interrupting the show for you and the others, when it throws you off. And it takes away from it. Because quite often I'll have people, I'll give you an example. The other day I was featuring at the Comedy Club of Kansas City, and there was a guy who just made the show for me. He was just, anything I said was just, and I incorporated that. And then later I heard that the club had come up to him and said, you're going to need to tone it down. This is too much. And see, to me, I think they thought he was bothering me, or they thought he was interrupting my show. But I, as a teacher and a comedian, who I've been doing both for over 20 years, I was able to incorporate it and not let it throw me off. So I think everything is about being positive. I love how Brian said, be kind with it, start off really nice, and then, but make sure that that staff is in on it, that they know, like, if just don't be hostile, but they know that if that person is actually interrupting, that they should remove them. I still think it's funny that Brian said that the spouse stayed. I do always think that's so funny. I'm like, okay, enjoy the show. But heckling usually doesn't bother me because even though I have adult onset ADHD, you would think, oh my gosh, I'm thrown off. But what I do is I incorporate it because I've learned that technique through teaching, because there's always going to be some kiddo who's trying to throw you off, or they need to go to the bathroom, or they're throwing something. And if you show fear or you show anger, then you've lost everybody. So that's why I don't regard them as hecklers, unless someone's like, you're fat, you're ugly, I hate you. I mean, and then that person's going to get removed. I've never had that happen. I think it's because I'm likable, and I think it's because I might hear somebody, commenting on the side or whatever, but as long as it's not rude, maybe they're, trying to figure out the bill or whatever, I just, move to the other side of the stage, or, incorporate that into the show. Because one thing that happens is when it turns hostile, it ruins the show for everybody, and I don't want to go into that battle of wits. Yeah, I have the microphone, I'm the CEO of this comedy show, or, I just, you don't want to play that. So anyway, so quite often I'll just incorporate it into the show and move on. Unless it's really cute, and then I can kind of incorporate it. But I have had a few over the years who were drunk, and when they're drunk and kind of belligerent, they need to be removed, because that's not adding to the show at all.
Right. So, okay. So we'll bounce back to you with a student heckler. If you can remember a student heckler story, that would be pretty awesome. So Brian, do you think that the ant has a lot to do with this back and forth with the audience too? Because you've got a lot of comedians who's made it the crowd work thing become like the expectation for people who have never been to a comedy club, think that it's going to be this conversation back and forth with somebody. I don't do that. I don't have the skill set that Andrea has to go back and forth with somebody in the audience. I mean, I can, but it's not really going to go anywhere. Like, I can make a joke about the fact that I'm not good at this because I do have ADHD, and like it does throw me off. So I get completely like, whatever. But do you think that like this glamorized, a comedy show is just a comedian asking someone, what do you do for a living? And then now it's this guy and this guy for the, the duration of the show.
There's two things to address here. Is one, that the Matt Rife phenomenon of talking to the audience, putting your clips out there, and everybody wants to do that. And I see it every open mic. Everyone's starting to do crowd work now, looking for a clip. And that's it. And the shows are not good because they're not good at it. Matt Rife has his own niche, and he does it well, and he puts it out there, right? But not everybody has that skill set. And to watch it every week, we've actually had to tell comics, no more crowd work, guys, because you guys, the shows are horrible. More horrible than normal. It's an open mic. So, but with that saying, the audience that comes is so being programmed by those Matt Rife clips to like want to talk. And it's like, that doesn't work either. I've seen it kind of dissipate a little bit. We're not seeing that as much as we were before. But I just want to talk briefly on it, like a technique that works. It's an improv thing with yes and. Okay. Yes and squashes a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, if you agree with what they have to say and move on, it sometimes works. So I've had 2 times where I've had weird heckles, and it's the same joke. I do the joke about women that wax their eyebrows off, draw them back on. Familiar? You guys familiar with this joke at all? Anyways,
yeah.
And then draw them back on. Anyways,
Michelle just hasn't got hers drawn back on yet. We do a lot of conversation about Michelle's eyebrows.
So
do I use a Sharpie? I don't know.
There you go. Well, don't go permanent, semi-permanent. Anyway, twice I've done this joke. So one night I did it, and it was Tempe Improv, 300 people, great show. Everything's going well. I do the joke. Everybody's having a good time, laughing a good time. Laugh dissipates. I go on to the next joke, and one woman yells out, "That's not funny." Like just out of a sea of laughter came this one comment. And I just really was like, oh, okay. To you, apparently, let me guess, you draw your eyebrows on. I
Yeah.
said, now everyone's going to look at you. And everybody did. And it squashed it. And I went, oh, I don't know why she brought it up. And then I just went on. We were fine. I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, and there was a guy, a Native American, and he was drunk, and he had his head on the table, right?
Mm.
And I do the same joke, right? And in the middle of the joke, he yells out, because of the white man. Okay. And I just said, he's right. And then he went and put his head back on the table. And I went, he's got a point. I don't know, whatever. And just finished it. So just agreeing with it, like, okay, you heard me, is sometimes all they want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another quick story that is like, I got done with a set and I went back into the bar area, and there was this young kid, and he was probably early 20s, had on a fedora, super skinny. He's like, is it cool if I just hang out with you comics? We're like, yeah, it's fine. So he's asking us questions and all that. When the show is over, this guy who was sitting in the front row comes out, and he's sunburned as all, he's Arizona sunburned summer, having a good time, drunk. And he's like, hey man, you were great, man. I really like that one joke you did, blah, 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 blah. And then he looks at the kid and he goes, that's a dumb hat. And the kid goes, you're right. And then the guy goes, and they just started talking normally. It just agreed and just squashed it. Then you just move right on. So
Yes.
one way to do it is just like, one more example, I swear, and then it'll be the last one.
No, you're good. Let's rock.
Yeah.
There was a, comics like to roast each other. And there was a roast from our good friend Mike James on his birthday many, many years ago. And one comic got up, and Mike and I are always together. So of course the jokes about us being a couple comes up, and he's just going hard at this joke. And I just yelled out, he's right. He's right. And I got a huge laugh, and he stopped and goes, what? Because it messed his flow. It messed anything else he was going to say. And he had locked and loaded a bunch of these gay jokes, right? Squashed. He tried the next one. I go, he's dead on. He knows it so well. And then he was just like, so I was reverse heckling a roast thing. But anyways, it worked. Just agreed with him. Yep. You know us. So, yep, that's me. Yep. And he was just like, okay. And then he went on to somebody else. But I thought that was like, it's a perfect kind of just agree with them to agree. Like, you suck. I know I suck. Just don't tell everybody. Anyway, just keep moving on. If there's, again, find your way that works for it, and then it should go away. So,
I do love that you said, stick to your personality. What's your behavior type? What would you really do with somebody? And then also the agreeing and kind of squashing it keeps it from being amped up. As Andrea said a little bit ago, like conference, we don't want it to get confrontational and physical and those kind of things. Like I love that you said I'm the CEO of the comedy club because I have the mic right now. Like you can get this attitude of like, this is my show and I'm the person. I've seen comics do that, and I've seen them spiral, and I've seen it turn a room, just suck the air out of it. When it's like it's what battle did you just win if you just go, yeah, you're right, I have a stupid hat, and that's it. Now with kids, it's a little bit differently, right? In your classroom, I had kids make jokes about my funky knees because I have one knee that needs surgery, and I normally didn't wear ever an outfit that like you could see my knees. And I can't remember. I walked into a room and a kid was like, "Oh dang, Miss June, what's wrong with your legs?" And one of the teachers was like, "There's nothing wrong with her knees," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, they don't match." He's right. Good call, Trevor. Like,
how do you get a matching
you
set?
thought of the thing that was different, right? But okay. So heckling, I love teacher heckle stories. Do you have one that you can give us of like a student that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I have one that has two students that I had to deal with because, and this is just where oh my goodness, it went off the rails. I wrote a fact on the board. I was teaching college English several years ago, and I wrote something on the board, and a student, and this was just a really intelligent group of kiddos, and a student said, I don't agree with that. And I was like, oh, you don't agree with this fact? okay. And I felt really called out, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then my not student teacher, but my teaching assistant, another student, agreed with him and
Oh
came up and
no.
changed my grammar on the board and was like, and just, and everybody was just, and I was like, oh no. I mean, I could feel my blood pressure going. Like there was just no way to handle that. Like I just had to stop. Sometimes I have to just let myself out of the room, take a deep breath. Sometimes I make like a show of it. And so I think that also helps to diffuse the situation. And of course, that teaching assistant did get removed from my classroom because I was like, I can't be undermined. Like that was so bad. But in the moment, what I like to do when a kiddo is doing something crazy or whatever, I just do like a stupid, and I'm just like, okay, and let me just leave the room for a second, and I come back and I'm like, okay, all good. And maybe I'm really taking a deep breath outside, maybe I'm really not. But I think sometimes handling things with humor absolutely diffuses the situation. And this is why I had to write down just now when Brian said the yes and, because I love that yes and concept from improv. But absolutely, if you agree with them and move on, it doesn't escalate. And I think those are all like, my improv background, my stand-up background, my teaching background. It allows that affable kind of, okay, let's just move forward, because I have seen things go off the rails in comedy shows. There's one particular comedian that I will not book anymore. I don't do names, and I'm really, really kind, and I have a pretty good reputation of being like, super, super equitable and nice in the community. But there's one guy who's gone off the rails 2 or 3 times that I've booked him, and it really does just tank that show. And it's like, and these were things like the ladies were a little drunk or they throw him off, but when he gets thrown off, he gets mean.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to avoid, because like I said, I have ADHD. Junior saying you do too.
Yes.
You can get thrown off, and that's upsetting, but you absolutely have to just recover. You just have to recover, and being mean is never going to solve it, because you will turn that audience against you and or kind of ruin that show, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Did my questioning not reveal that I have ADHD, where I'm like, I'm going to ask you a question. So when were you born? What was your parents' name? What kind of car do you drive? My one question is always 9 different questions.
Same.
And then my brain goes, I hope I can remember how many questions I just asked you. And did we answer all of those questions? I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things Michele told, I'm pretty sure it was you, Michele, very early on when I was
Totally.
first writing comedy. Anything brilliant comes from you, Michele, right?
Yep.
I like, it was one of those where it's like, anybody have a, Doberman Pinscher dog or, whatever. It was like this, like asking a question to the audience. And, and Michele goes, do you want to talk to the audience? Do you want them to talk to you right now? Like you don't even know, right? You don't even know what you're saying yet. And so she was like, don't open up the door for a conversation with people that you don't have an answer for. And I think some of the best people that do the crowd work are people who, no matter what someone answers, right, it looks like it's natural and it's, whatever. But I'm sure, Andrea, when you ask a question and you enjoy doing crowd work, when you ask the question, where does somebody work? It doesn't matter where they say they work. You already know where you're kind of going with this. It can change it up a little. If somebody has a unique job or, whatever. But if you go into this conversation with somebody, you have the skill set to handle the conversation.
Yep.
And Michele, that's one of the first things she said to me. She's like, don't ask now I'll do inclusive questions where it's like, I mean, I'm sure some of y'all have been or, you guys know, or whatever, but I don't say who here has, there's a joke I do about my hair and I say, where's my 80s ladies at? Right. And, and I kind of get that. And there's a question I ask that everyone knows the answer to, so I know what they're going to, and if they don't say the specific brand that I'm talking about, then I have a comeback to the one person in the room. Like if everyone says Aquanet and one person says rave, then I'm like, oh, we're bragging, like bougie, rave, like that type of thing. Like,
that's cute.
Don't ask the question if you don't want to be heckled and you don't know how to handle the conversation. Just don't ask the questions.
Well, don't ask the question if you don't already have an answer. I find that dealing with hecklers, it's good to have a few of those pat answers already in your pocket. that you already have them. And if you are asking people, oh, what kind of work do you do? What kind of work do you do? If you're doing that kind of crowd work, no matter what job that they come up with, you already have an answer or a way to steer that back to what you want to talk about. Like there's one comedian that said, okay, I'm going to do random jokes between, A through F or A through Z or whatever. And he's like, pick a letter. And people shout out, letters like, all right, I heard H, because that's what he wanted to do. And he was going to work on that particular thing. So, which is kind of neat. I had another, and when you said the yes and, which diffuses hecklers, diffuses situations, kind of, that's a great marriage advice also. If you find yourself in a situation, in an argument with your spouse, you go, yes, and this is how, so you could do the yes and within a minute, brings it back down, just brings it back.
The joke I help Mike James with is, when your wife says, do these make me look fat? That's not when you yes and it.
No, that's the only one.
That's the only one.
And you still look great. Run. I wanted to just kind of say one other thing here too about yes and then I'll give you a great heckle you can use that no one can combat. I did a thing with community hospice here in Arizona, doing improv training for their hospice staff. And one of the things they wanted to talk about was, people with Alzheimer's will speak their mind, and they're not aware of what they're saying. So they will say like, you're fat, or I don't like you, you smell, or whatever. And they said, is there a way to combat that so that, caretakers don't take it all so seriously? And the yes and method of that is just like, so I'm not pleasing to you right now. What do you think I can do to improve myself? So instead of making it negative and, getting into an argument with somebody who's, may or may not remember the argument in 20 minutes, how do you combat it just in that moment and understand that yes. And that whole hospice training, by the way, is all about keeping it positive. Yeah. So if it's like, we went to the lake and your grandkids are going, we never went to the lake, Grandma. No, Grandma, tell us about the lake. Keep it positive, keep it in the yes and go that way. Same thing with heckling though, but we practiced that, which was horrible because we were just walking up to each other saying, you're ugly. Going, I appreciate you don't think I look my best today. What do you think I could do to improve myself today? I mean, but it got to the point where you're just laughing at this point because you're just coming up with insults for each other. But at that point, it makes you realize it's just words. Don't take it personally and just try to work through it. So you can definitely do that with an audience. But Michelle's right. I mean, if my wife's like, you didn't do the dishes. Yeah, you're right. I didn't do the dishes. And I'm sorry. Okay, now that was a little sarcastic, and that's how I typically answer, which gets me in trouble. But anyways.
I'm going to need you to repeat that, Brian. Back up.
Do yes and do it the right way.
No, you said my name, and then you said something. So, go back to that.
Oh, Michelle was right. Is that the statement?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay,
say that a couple more times.
Put that on a shirt. There you go.
Michelle is right.
The other thing I was going to say, there's one heckle I heard one time that just made me laugh so hard because we didn't know what to do with this guy. It was years ago. I was at this restaurant and there was a man sitting in the front. He was from Canada and he'd been golfing all day. Apparently he started drinking at 11 a.m. all day long, shows at 7 o'clock. The first guy went up and he was sat on a stool, and this old guy, after every joke, went, stop. Just stop. And then every once in a while you go, one more. Stop. And I'm like, what do you do for that? What do you do for stop? No. But it was so funny because it was it's the simplest thing. Stop. Just stop.
Oh my God. That's the best.
I've never tried it on a comic, but I really want to try it one night just to see how they react. Just stop.
I think I've had that at a lot of shows. If they're not saying it, they're thinking it sometimes. Like, no,
usually they just walk out.
Just stop. Hey, okay. So I will say that as we kind of wrap up this segment, one thing that I would want to say, and not all clubs are created equal. Not all staff is created equal, right? Not everyone is professional. And we have seen some crazy stuff on social media and in the news and things like that, where comedians have had people come up on stage or try to come at them or, do whatever. And, I think as new comedians, or even like certain personalities, they say there's fight, flight, right? Freeze or fawn. That's the new, like, where you try to, be friends, or, what can I do in this situation? But a lot of people can freeze, or you don't know like what to do in this situation. And I think it's always a good reminder that like you can walk off the stage.
Absolutely.
If you are in a situation at a club where you are not safe and nothing is being done to keep you safe, and you truly get to a point, it's okay to like remind yourself that like it's not worth having somebody come up here, if they're not willing to back you up and have a safe, because I think, in any other work environment, we have an expectation of safety.
Yeah.
No, if you're working at a factory, or you're a teacher, or you're, whatever job site, we have an expectation that, we should be able to be safe at what we're doing. And if the person who employs you is not keeping you safe, put the mic down and go to where you are. And it is what it is. Maybe you forfeit a paycheck, right? Well, let's be honest, I haven't become a millionaire from club gigs. So if I have to forfeit that because I'm not safe, that's okay. It's okay.
I have called security to make sure that certain comics, really only twice, were safe, because they are dumb enough to just whatever. And it's like, this audience member is hot right now. Yeah. I mean, let's keep everybody safe, calm, and cool, and just move on. Nobody needs to go to jail.
And let me jump on that, guys. Do not ever give up the mic. I have seen it done where people go, "Oh, you think you're funnier? Then come up here." Don't do that. That was not me. Those were friends of mine, and I was like, "Oh, this is not going to go well." I have seen and heard some horrible things about doing that. Do not give up that mic.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and an excellent thing to kind of wrap it up with. Michele, I see wheels turning. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm just agreeing with all of these things and then some. I mean, absolutely. Because we had one heckler on the Moms Unhinged.
Oh.
And it wasn't that he was wanting, like, that he was like heckling, but he was drinking. They kind of sat in the front area, and you knew that the whole reason why he came with his wife was so he could be recognized. Here. And he wanted to be recognized. And that's what I like about having, when you're doing theaters, you can't just give up the mic like you're talking about, Andrea, because you're up higher, and there's some distance, which is really good. It's when you are in the clubs or those lower staged areas that it's harder. It's harder to, because you can feel. So when I like it when a club has a green room or a second way off the stage, a backstage, anything like that's just so good. June, thank you. Thank you for giving everybody the freedom to know it's okay to walk off.
Yeah.
It's okay to leave a situation if you're not feeling safe. Like that's brilliant. I would never have thought of that. Because I would think, oh, this is my job. I got to stay here. I have to protect my space. But no, you have that permission to walk away. And I love that. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that with our listeners, because, whether they're starting out or whether, they've been doing it for a few years or, well seasoned, we can forget these things as we're continuing to do our craft. If it's not safe, walk away or run if you have to. And Brian, I'm glad that you're a part owner of a club that does take that safety back into consideration. Because I remember the first time I did the Tulsa Comedy Club, years ago, 20 some whatever years ago, they were very strict about their if someone's heckling this or that, first thing, if the comic comments on it, the whole staff, all the wait staff and the managers, like, okay, who is that? And they've got their eye on that person.
Yeah.
And then if at any point, it happens again, one of the staff will come over and talk to them. If they do it again, they have security there just physically removing the person.
Yeah.
And like they were always on top of it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you don't see that.
Well-
When you have these coffee houses and, just go
Yeah.
ahead, Brian.
I'll give you one quick one here. We had a comic. Who not quite sure what he was on at the time. Second show, he decided he did not want to be there, and he was being very weird and very belligerent from stage. And it was a question of getting him off, but getting him off safely, because he ended up kicking a table in front of him with people there. And it was like, okay, now if I felt like if we just would have killed the mic, turned the lights up, we were going to have a situation, because he was just so, lit him, kind of found the right spot to play the music. And then he did freak out. I have this all in video, and it's hard to watch. Because the problem is you start second guessing yourself, going, I should have done something sooner. But I remember at the time, me and the manager were side by side going, I don't want to, we don't want to spook him. It's like an animal at that point.
Yeah.
You don't want to spook him, and he's going to do something stupid. He's up there with the mic stand, and he's got the microphone. He's crazy. And then like when we lit him, he was like, finally. And then he starts whipping his hands up in the air. He falls to the stage, kicking his legs up. I mean, he was just insane. Now, the two other guys that were on the show, the host is a friend of mine, and but he's not the most manliest guy on the planet. As soon as the music came, I'm like, okay, this guy will come out in the show. And I look over, he's standing next to me. I go, what are you doing here? And he goes, I'm not going up there. So then the feature act went out, which luckily our feature act that night, his day job is a counselor. So he went out. He's like, okay, all right, buddy. He helped him up, got him out the door, kind of calmed the audience down. And when that guy left, he and his buddies, they all left. I think I think it was Coke is what I think it was. They were coping pretty good. Then they just disappeared, and then now it's damage control with the audience. So now the audience is safe. We're making sure they were safe. They're all good, giving away free tickets for the next show, all that kind of stuff. I had to call the owner going, fire immediately, because we're not doing this tomorrow night. Having to explain that situation and everything else. It's chaos at that point. But the main thing is make sure staff is safe, audience is safe, all the other comics are safe, everything else. It's the whole thing. And that became our moment where I told staff, I said, I talked to everybody, and it was like everybody in the front saw something weird going on. Everybody inside the room kind of saw something weird going on, but none of us spoke to each other. And I said it partially joking, but I meant it. I said, this was our 9/11. See something, say something, everybody talks, because this cannot happen again. So we did that. So we've implemented that now. So I think we're pretty good. And that's a rare instant that would happen. The guy has gotten help. He's a very funny comic, and he's back out on the road and all that good stuff. But it was a weird situation.
Is that your code now for your staff if something's happening, like 9/11?
9/11, right? Yeah, because nobody uses that. I will say this. So if you have a pair of nunchucks, fine, that's great. But you look weird walking around with these. So if I could, just so much, I made these microphone nunchucks. So he's ready in a whim if you need it. Go do your business.
Those are cute. That's fun.
And they
want
hurt.
some now.
They're
so
practical
want
too.
There's every comedian would love to have a set of microphone nunchucks for a heckler. Just if you could just
really
get
fun.
them out and do, And where have the nunchucks gone? Okay, we'll talk about that in another panel discussion. But when I was growing up, like all the guys that I grew up with, I guess it's your neighborhood. There was nunchucks, there were brass knuckles, and machetes. Why a machete? I don't know why half the guys in my neighborhood had a machete. It was a thing. So
we just like saying that machete.
You take a lot of machete, fight over. That's your yes and.
Yes.
And I'm leaving.
Yes, and okay. So I want Michele, if you don't mind, Michele, go ahead and run below the screen down here for our people who are watching to be able to see all of the social media for our amazing guests. So AndreaCaspari.com. Andrea, it's Caspari comedy on Instagram and YouTube, and at Caspariland. Yes, and that's on TikTok. Yes,
TikTok is Caspariland comedy, but
sorry,
but you can get all the good stuff if you just go to my website. You should be able to find everything from there. So
Yes, that's always awesome when people do the right thing on technology. Don't go to my website. But Andrea's is done the right way. Andrea Caspari.com. And Mr. Brian Kohatsu, if they want to find you, they're going to find you at Brian Kohatsu, KOHATSU.com. YouTube is comedian Brian Kohatsu. Instagram, Kohatsu Comedy. Facebook, Brian Kohatsu Comedy.
All mine are on there too. Go to the website. There's links for all of them.
Yeah.
And then sometime soon, Brian is going to help me figure out my website where I can put the link to my stuff. So you can find me mostly at Junebug Comedy, junebugcomedy.com. And Michele is Michelle's Comedy, and on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and, all of that. We run it every week. You can find Michele and I anywhere you want to find us. And guys, please like and follow the Laugh Support Podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, all of those places, because we want to keep having amazing guests like Andrea and Brian on the show. Friends, thank you guys so much for being here. Michelle's going to kick you to the back if you want to hang around, and we can give you a proper "we love you" goodbye. Or if you got places to go because we have kept you probably longer than you expected, we understand if you ditch. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yes.
I want to say thank you so much, June and Michele, for including us. And Brian, it was so nice to finally meet you.
You too.
So this was just a ball, just a doll.
Thank you, everybody. This was fun.
A doll and a ball. All right, Michele, we knew it's going to be an amazing panel. And
that was fantastic. That was absolutely fantastic. So I'm excited about when we release that. It'll probably be a 2-parter again.
Yes, it will absolutely be a 2-parter. And Michele, you will edit that. Wink, wink, your son. So we're going to thank him in advance for all of his technology skills and how he's going to help us out with editing that. So friends, this has been an awesome episode. The tip of the day, Michele, if you had that tip of the day really quick, was give me a break. That's what it was. Give me a break. I love Andrea was talking about that, she had a break from touring. She was snowed in a little bit, kind of taking a break then. And it's okay, friends. It's okay to take a break. Some of our most amazing comedian friends who have crazy packed schedules, the ones who are really enjoying it the most and staying the most healthy mentally and physically, are the ones who take a break. It's okay to just step away for a little bit. And a lot of times you come back with a new, fresh perspective and maybe have some life experiences that you can take to the stage. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Laugh Support Podcast. Michele, are we going to pack in a dumb joke really fast before we go?
We are. But first I would say, when you said, give me a break, I right away went to Kit Kat.
I know.
I'm sorry. I just, give me a break. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Not a sponsor.
All right. Give us your dumb joke. Your funny joke, your mom joke.
June, I'm a little offended that you keep calling it a dumb joke. I think it's fun. And I just want you to know, maybe you didn't know this, but cats and comedians are a lot alike. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they do, because they both love a really good gag. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in.
You've already done that joke.
No, I didn't. I said one of the fur balls. Last thing, it was because they love a good gag. And then this time I brought it back with, hey, did you know cats and comedians are a lot alike? Because they both like a good gag. Okay, fine. You didn't like that? Okay,
no,
fine.
But you know what a callback is? A callback is to something that was funny the first time, and that wasn't funny the first time. Okay, I love you, Michele VanDusen. Listen, listeners, go watch this on YouTube and see Brian's amazing microphone nunchucks and Andrea's cool gift that her friend made for her.
They're called books. Oh.
No, her light bulb. Anyway, okay, that's it. Jesus and Junebug loves you. Michele, let's go. Tell them goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.